Dr. Zalthara's four eyes focused intently on the crystalline containment pod that had just been brought aboard their medical vessel. The ancient human artifact floated in the cargo bay, its surface covered in warning symbols that made even the veteran Kethmori physician's scales ripple with unease. The symbols were in a dozen different languages, some she recognized from the galactic archives, others completely foreign. "Commander, are you certain we should be handling this?" asked her assistant, Dr. Velcan, his tentacles nervously wrapping around his medical scanner. The salvage crew found it in the forbidden sectors. The radiation signatures alone suggest it's been drifting for over 3,000 cycles. Zalthara clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. As chief medical officer of the research vessel Healing Light, she had seen many strange things in her 2 centuries of practice. But this pod was different. The bio readings were unlike anything in their databases. Inside the crystalline shell lay what appeared to be a human male, perfectly preserved, his chest rising and falling in an impossibly slow rhythm. "The Galactic Medical Council specifically requested we attempt revival," she replied, running her clawed hands over her scanner. "Humans are extinct, Velcan. This could be the last of a species. We have a moral obligation to try." The human appeared to be in his early 30s by their species' aging standards. His body was heavily muscled and scarred, suggesting a military background. Strange metallic implants were visible beneath his pale skin, technology that their scanners couldn't properly identify. Most disturbing were the restraints built into the pod itself. Not the gentle medical restraints used for healing, but combat-grade containment systems. "Doctor, look at these readings," called out Dr. Hesike from her station. The insectoid physician's compound eyes reflected the blue glow of her instruments. "His cellular structure is extraordinary. The muscle density is 3 times what we'd expect from baseline human physiology. And these neural pathways..." She paused, chittering in confusion. "I've never seen synaptic activity like this. Even in stasis, his brain is operating at incredible levels." Zalthara moved closer to examine the data. The readings were indeed remarkable. This human's biology had been enhanced far beyond natural parameters. Genetic markers suggested extensive military augmentation, but the technology was more advanced than anything in their historical records of human civilization. "Begin revival procedures," she ordered, despite the growing knot of concern in her stomach. "Full medical protocols. Velcan, prepare the neural stabilizers. SIK, monitor all life signs. If anything goes wrong, we abort immediately." The medical team worked efficiently, their combined centuries of experience guiding them through the complex process. The crystalline pod responded to their commands, slowly warming and beginning the awakening sequence. Ancient systems hummed to life, technologies that predated their own civilization by millennia. As the stasis field weakened, the human's vital signs began to strengthen. His heart rate increased, his breathing deepened, and his brain activity spiked dramatically. The neural readings were so intense that Hesike had to recalibrate her instruments twice. "Doctor, you need to see this," Velkin said, his voice tight with worry. He projected a holographic display of the human's DNA structure. "These aren't just military enhancements. Look at the genetic markers here and here. This individual has been modified for something specific, something that required incredible physical and mental capabilities." Zalthara studied the genetic code, her medical training allowing her to decipher the modifications. Enhanced strength, increased reflexes, improved healing factor, expanded cognitive capacity. This human had been turned into something approaching perfection. But for what purpose? The pod systems suddenly flashed a warning in ancient human script. Velkin quickly ran it through their translation matrix. His tentacles went pale as the translation appeared. "Doctor," he whispered, "it says Berserker Unit 07, combat effectiveness. Extreme, psychological state. Unstable, containment protocol, permanent." Before Zalthara could respond, the human's eyes snapped open. They were a startling blue color, but there was something wrong with them. They moved too quickly, tracking movement that wasn't there, focusing on threats that didn't exist. Even unconscious, his enhanced reflexes had kept him in a state of perpetual alertness. "Completion of revival in 30 seconds, announced the pod's automated system in perfect galactic standard, though the voice carried an ominous undertone. Zalthara looked at her team, seeing her own growing fear reflected in their alien features. They had assumed they were saving the last member of an extinct species. But the warnings, the restraints, the military modifications, what if they were about to unleash something that had been deliberately contained? Should we abort? Velkan asked quietly. The human's eyes suddenly focused directly on Zalthara through the crystalline shell. Despite being technically unconscious, there was an intelligence there, an awareness that made her scales stand on end. Those blue eyes held depths of experience that spoke of battles fought and horrors witnessed. Too late, she whispered as the pod began its final opening sequence. He's already awake. The crystalline pod opened with a soft hiss, releasing 3 millennia of trapped air. The human's eyes remained fixed on Dr. Zalthara as he sat up slowly, his movements precise and controlled despite having been in stasis for thousands of years. His enhanced physiology had maintained perfect muscle tone and reflexes during his long sleep. "Where am I?" His voice was calm, almost gentle, spoken in perfect galactic standard. The translation implants in the pod had apparently downloaded the current linguistic databases during revival. "And what year is it?" Zalthara approached cautiously, her medical scanner held defensively. "You're aboard the medical vessel Healing Light. The current galactic cycle is 4,847. You've been in stasis for approximately 3,000 years." The human processed this information without visible emotion, though his eyes continued to scan the room with mechanical precision. Every detail was cataloged, every potential threat assessed. His gaze lingered on the exit points and the positions of each medical team member. "My name is Marcus Chun, Sergeant, Terran Defense Force, serial number 7741 Omega." He paused, and, for a moment, something vulnerable flickered across his features. "Though I suppose none of that matters anymore, does it? If it's been 3,000 years, then humanity became extinct approximately 2 millennia ago," Dr. said gently, her compound eyes reflecting sympathy. "We're sorry for your loss." Marcus nodded slowly, as if he had expected this news. "The siege of Terra, we knew it was hopeless." He looked down at his hands, flexing fingers that moved with inhuman precision. "I remember now. The final battle, the retreat." And then his expression darkened, and suddenly the gentle demeanor vanished. The air in the medical bay seemed to grow colder as something predatory awakened behind his eyes. "Dr. Velikon's tentacles recoiled instinctively." "The Vanguard," Marcus whispered, and there was death in his voice. "They're still out there, aren't they? The Devourers. The ones who consumed world after world." Zalthara consulted her historical databases quickly. The Vanguard had indeed been responsible for humanity's extinction, along with dozens of other species. But they had vanished from the galaxy shortly after humanity's fall, leaving behind only dead worlds and scattered ruins. "They disappeared long ago," she assured him. "The galaxy has been at peace for over 1,000 cycles." Marcus stood up from the pod, and despite being shorter than any member of the medical team, his presence filled the room. The scars on his body told stories of countless battles, while the metallic implants beneath his skin hummed with barely contained energy. "Peace," he repeated, and there was something bitter in his tone. "They told us that too, before the first colonies burned." He walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars with eyes that had seen civilizations die. "You said I was found in the forbidden sectors?" "Yes, drifting in a field of debris that our scanners couldn't properly identify," Velkan answered nervously. "The salvage team thought it was just an ancient artifact." Marcus laughed, and the sound made everyone in the room step back. It wasn't the laugh of a stable person. "Artifact, that's one way to put it." He turned back to them, and his expression had shifted again, becoming almost childlike in its confusion. "I'm sorry, I don't mean to frighten you. The modifications they made to me, they affect more than just my body." Dr. Zalthara's medical scanner was registering alarming readings. The human's brain chemistry was fluctuating wildly, cycling between different personality states. Whatever had been done to him had pushed his mental capabilities far beyond safe parameters. "Marcus," she said carefully, "can you tell us about these modifications? We want to help you, but we need to understand what was done to you." His eyes focused on her with laser intensity. "Help me. For a moment, genuine hope appeared in his expression. You want to help me? That's kind of you. Most people just wanted to use me. He sat down heavily on a medical bench, suddenly, looking exhausted. They called it the Berserker program. Take the best soldiers, enhance their bodies and minds beyond human limits, then point them at the enemy. And it worked. Dr. Hesse asked, though she already dreaded the answer. Oh, it worked beautifully, Marcus replied, his voice dropping to a whisper. I could process battlefield information faster than any computer, react to threats before they fully materialized, fight for days without rest or food. His hands began to shake slightly. I killed so many of them. The Vanguard forces, their servitor species, anyone who stood with them. The medical bay's lights suddenly flickered as Marcus's emotional state shifted again. His implants were interfacing with the ship's systems unconsciously, his enhanced brain reaching out through electromagnetic fields. But the cost, he continued, unaware of the technological chaos around him. The cost was my humanity. They had to keep modifying the program, pushing us further, because each victory required more violence, more brutality. We stopped being soldiers and became something else entirely. Dr. Velkand checked his readings and paled. Doctor, his neural activity is spiking again, and I'm detecting massive electromagnetic interference. Zalthara realized with growing horror that Marcus wasn't just enhanced. He was a living weapon that had been sealed away for a reason. The gentle, confused person speaking to them was fighting a constant battle against whatever the military had turned him into. Marcus, she said softly, why were you in stasis? Why were you sealed away? His blue eyes met hers, and in them she saw the weight of millennia of guilt and pain. Because after we won, after we drove the Vanguard back and saved what was left of human space, I couldn't stop fighting. Tears began to run down his face. I couldn't turn it off. The rage, the need to kill, the berserker state they'd programmed into me. I was a hero who had become a monster. The ship's systems flickered again as his emotional distress increased. Somewhere deep in his enhanced brain, ancient combat protocols were stirring, recognizing the stress patterns and preparing to activate. The medical bay's lights flickered more violently as Marcus's emotional state destabilized further. Dr. Zalthara watched her instruments with growing alarm as electromagnetic readings spiked throughout the ship. The human's enhanced neural implants were bleeding energy into every system around him. I tried so hard to control it. Marcus continued, his voice taking on a desperate edge. After the war ended, they tried to help me readjust. Therapy, meditation, chemical suppressants. Nothing worked. The berserker programming was too deeply embedded in my neural pathways. Dr. Hesuke was backing toward the door, her compound eyes reflecting the chaotic light patterns from the failing electronics. Doctor, perhaps we should sedate him until we can better understand his condition. Marcus's head snapped toward her within human speed, and, for just a moment, something else looked out from behind his eyes. Something cold and calculating that evaluated her as a potential threat. Dr. Hesuke froze, every instinct screaming that she was in the presence of a predator. I wouldn't recommend that, Marcus said, his voice now carrying harmonics that resonated strangely in their alien hearing. The last time someone tried to sedate me without my permission, He stopped himself, blinking rapidly as the gentler personality reasserted control. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to frighten you. It's just that sudden movements, perceived threats, they trigger automatic responses. Zalthara slowly moved her scanner to get better readings on his neural activity. What she saw made her heart skip beats. Marcus's brain was operating on multiple levels simultaneously. The surface personality, confused, guilty, desperately trying to be human, was fighting for control against deeper programming that viewed everything around him as either ally, enemy, or asset. Marcus, can you tell us more about what happened after the war? How did you end up in stasis? His expression grew distant, as if looking back through centuries of painful memories. The first incident happened 6 months after the armistice. I was in a civilian market on New Geneva, just trying to buy food like a normal person. A vendor accidentally bumped into me, and He shuddered. I broke his arm in 3 places before I even realized what I was doing. The combat reflexes were faster than my conscious mind. Dr. Velkan was quietly monitoring ship systems, his tentacles dancing over multiple control panels. The electromagnetic interference was spreading throughout the vessel, causing minor systems failures on every deck. Whatever Marcus was, he was affecting their technology in ways their science couldn't explain. It got worse from there, Marcus continued. Every loud noise was enemy fire. Every unexpected movement was an attack. I couldn't sleep without sedatives because my enhanced hearing would wake me at the slightest sound, ready to fight. And when the Berserker state activated, the lights went out completely for a moment before emergency power kicked in, bathing the medical bay in red light. In that crimson illumination, Marcus looked less like a confused refugee and more like the weapon he had been designed to be. When it activated, I wasn't Marcus anymore. I was Unit 07, and my only programming was to eliminate threats. The problem was in peacetime, everything looked like a threat eventually. Dr. Zalthara felt her scales ripple with fear as she began to understand the scope of what they were dealing with. How many people did you hurt? 17 dead in the first year. Marcus answered with mechanical precision. 43 severely injured. All civilians. All people who had done nothing wrong except be in the wrong place when my conditioning took over. His hands clenched into fists, and the metal implants in his forearms began to glow with internal heat. I begged them to help me. I begged them to find a way to remove the programming or put me somewhere I couldn't hurt anyone else. The ship's artificial gravity fluctuated slightly, making everyone grab onto nearby surfaces for support. Marcus's emotional distress was now affecting fundamental ship systems. So they put you in stasis, Dr. Hesse said, understanding flooding her voice. Not immediately. First they tried experimental treatments. Brain surgery to remove the combat implants. Chemical therapy to suppress the Berserker conditioning. Nothing worked. The modifications were too extensive, too deeply integrated into my neural structure. Marcus looked up at them, and his eyes held depths of despair that seemed to span centuries. In the end, I volunteered for the stasis program. Better to sleep forever than to keep hurting innocent people. Dr. Velkan suddenly looked up from his console, his tentacles pale with alarm. Doctor, I'm detecting multiple system cascades throughout the ship. Whatever he's doing to our electronics, it's accelerating. And he paused, checking his readings again. I'm getting reports of similar failures on the escort vessels. The interference is spreading beyond our ship. Zalthara realized they were rapidly approaching a crisis point. Marcus's unconscious electromagnetic emissions were threatening the entire fleet, and his emotional state was becoming increasingly unstable. Marcus, I need you to try to calm yourself, she said as gently as possible. Your enhanced systems are interfering with our technology. Can you control it? He looked at his hands in horror, watching the implants pulse with energy. I don't know how. They never taught us how to control the secondary effects. We were weapons, not people. When the Berserker programming activates, everything else becomes secondary to combat effectiveness. As if summoned by his words, alarms suddenly began blaring throughout the ship. Emergency lights flashed as critical systems began failing one by one. And in the chaos, Marcus's personality began to shift again, the confused and guilty human receding as something far more dangerous awakened. Hostile environment detected, he said, and his voice had changed completely. Gone was the vulnerability and pain. In its place was the cold efficiency of a military computer. Multiple system failures suggest enemy action, initiating threat assessment protocols. Dr. Zalthara backed away as Marcus stood up, his movements now fluid and predatory. The frightened human was gone, replaced by something that evaluated everything around him through the lens of warfare. Beginning defensive preparations, Unit 07 announced, and the medical bay became a battlefield. Unit 07 moved through the medical bay with lethal efficiency, his enhanced senses cataloging every detail of his environment. The confused and guilty Marcus was gone, replaced by 3,000 years of military programming that had finally been triggered by the ship's system failures. To the Berserker protocols, the alarms and chaos could only mean one thing. They were under attack. Scanning for hostile forces, he announced in a voice devoid of emotion. His blue eyes swept the room, analyzing each medical team member for threat potential. Dr. Zalthara watched in horror as those eyes lingered on the surgical instruments, calculating their effectiveness as weapons. Marcus, please, she tried to reach the human personality buried beneath the programming. We're not enemies. We're trying to help you. Unit 07's head turned toward her with mechanical precision. Identity, unknown alien species. Threat assessment, minimal physical capability, but unknown technological advantages. Recommendation, secure for interrogation. He moved toward her within human speed, covering the distance between them in a heartbeat. Dr. Zalthara barely had time to register the motion before his hand closed around her throat with carefully calibrated pressure, enough to immobilize her, but not enough to cause permanent damage. The precision was terrifying in its implications. Please state your military affiliation and current operational objectives, Unit 07 requested in the same emotionless tone. Behind his eyes, Zalthara could see rapid calculations taking place, strategies forming and reforming as he processed every detail of the situation. Dr. Velkan tried to activate a security alert, but his console sparked and died as electromagnetic interference from Marcus's implants overloaded the circuits. The Berserker's enhanced systems were unconsciously defending against any attempt to call for help, treating all communications as potential enemy coordination. "We're doctors," Dr. Heskin said carefully, her voice trembling. "We found you in space and try to save your life. We're not part of any military force." Unit 07's grip on Zalthara's throat loosened slightly as he processed this information. For a moment, confusion flickered across his features, the buried Marcus fighting against the combat programming. But the Berserker protocols quickly reasserted control. Negative. Previous intelligence indicates enemy forces frequently use medical personnel as infiltration assets. Standard procedure requires verification of all claims. His free hand reached out and somehow interfaced directly with the damaged ship systems, downloading security footage and personnel records in seconds. The technology should have been incompatible, but his enhanced neural implants adapted to alien systems with frightening ease. Through the ship's internal sensors, Unit 07 analyzed the medical team's recent activities. He watched their attempts to revive him, their genuine concern for his well-being, their fear when the Berserker personality emerged. The data conflicted with his threat assessment protocols. "Anomalous behavior detected," he announced, and his grip on Zalthara loosened further. "Actions inconsistent with enemy infiltration patterns. Beginning secondary analysis." Dr. Velkan saw an opportunity and slowly moved toward a manual override panel. If he could trigger an emergency containment field, they might be able to restrain Marcus until the human personality returned. But Unit 07's enhanced hearing detected the subtle movement of his tentacles across metal controls. Hostile action detected. Initiating countermeasures. What happened next defied the medical team's understanding of physics. Unit 07 released Zalthara and moved across the room in a blur of motion that seemed to bend space around him. His hand struck Velkan's console with precisely calculated force, destroying the controls without harming the doctor. The electromagnetic pulse from his implants fried every electronic device within 10 meters. "Threat neutralized," Unit 07 announced, but something was wrong. His movements were becoming erratic, and his voice carried harmonics of distress. Deep in his enhanced brain, the human consciousness was fighting back against the Berserker programming. "No," a different voice said, using the same mouth. Marcus was struggling to the surface. "They're not enemies. They saved me. I won't hurt them." Unit 07's body went rigid as two different sets of neural pathways battled for control. His implants sparked and overheated as contradictory commands flooded his systems. The electromagnetic interference intensified, causing structural damage to the ship as competing personalities tried to assert dominance. "I remember now," Marcus gasped, his voice mixing with the Berserker's mechanical tones. "The therapy sessions. The doctors who try to help me. Some of them looked like these people, different species but healers. They're not threats." "Negative," Unit 07 responded even as Marcus spoke. "Unknown alien species in unknown location following system failures. Probability of enemy action remains high." Mission parameters require. There is no mission, Marcus shouted, and for a moment his voice overpowered the berserker completely. The war is over. Humanity is dead. There's no one left to protect. The words seemed to hit Unit 07 like a physical blow. His tactical programming had been built around protecting human civilians and military assets. If humanity was truly extinct, then his primary directives had no meaning. Logic circuits that had operated for 3 millennia suddenly found themselves facing an impossible paradox. Dr. Zalthara, still rubbing her throat where he had grabbed her, recognized the moment of vulnerability. Marcus, listen to my voice. You're safe here. The war ended thousands of years ago. The Vanguard is gone. The people you were protecting are at peace. Unit 07's analysis of ship records had confirmed the historical data. Humanity's extinction. The Vanguard's disappearance. Millennia of galactic peace. But accepting this data would mean acknowledging that everything he was built for had been meaningless. If humanity is extinct, Unit 07 said slowly, his voice mixing confusion with mechanical precision, then what is my purpose? What are my operational parameters in a galaxy without humans to protect? The question hung in the air as both personalities grappled with an existential crisis that their creators had never anticipated. Around them, the ship's systems continued to fail as electromagnetic chaos poured from Marcus's overloaded implants. Dr. Say stepped forward carefully, her medical training overriding her fear. Maybe your purpose now is to heal instead of fight, to help us understand what humanity was, instead of destroying what threatens it. Both Marcus and Unit 07 stared at her, and for the first time since his awakening, the Berserker programming had no ready response to a concept it had never been programmed to consider. The medical bay fell silent, except for the crackling of overloaded circuits and the soft hum of Marcus's implants as they processed Dr. Hesake's words. The concept of healing instead of fighting created recursive loops in Unit 07's tactical programming, while Marcus's buried humanity grasped onto the idea like a lifeline. Healing, Marcus repeated, his voice soft with wonder. I remember wanting to be a doctor before the war, before they selected me for enhancement. His eyes focused on Dr. Zalthara with sudden clarity. You saved me. You brought me back from stasis not to use me as a weapon, but because you thought I deserved to live. Unit 07's programming struggled against this interpretation. Negative. Revival protocols indicate strategic value assessment. Subject possesses advanced military capabilities useful for... No, Marcus said firmly, and this time his voice carried the authority of someone who had finally made a choice. That's not who I want to be anymore. That's not who I was before they changed me. The electromagnetic interference began to stabilize as Marcus consciously worked to control his enhanced systems. It was a battle of will against programming, human consciousness against artificial conditioning. Dr. Zalthara watched her instruments as his neural activity shifted, showing a mind literally rewiring itself. It hurts, Marcus gasped, pressing his hands to his temples as sparks flew from his implants. The Berserker protocols don't want to be suppressed. They keep trying to reassert combat status. Dr. Velkan moved cautiously to his medical scanner, keeping his movements slow and non-threatening. Perhaps we can help. Our neural medicine is advanced. If you're willing to let us try, we might be able to ease the conflict in your mind. Unit 07's voice cut through Marcus's struggle. Medical intervention by unknown alien species represents unacceptable security risk. Recommendation: eliminate potential contamination vectors. They're not contamination vectors, Marcus replied through gritted teeth. They're doctors. Like I wanted to be. Like I could still become. The philosophical battle playing out in his enhanced brain was visible to the medical team as fluctuating energy readings and shifting personality markers. Two fundamentally different worldviews were fighting for control of the same neural architecture. Dr. Zalthara made a decision that would either save Marcus or doom them all. She slowly approached him, holding her medical scanner openly where he could see it. Marcus, I want you to look at something. These are your brain patterns right now. She projected a holographic display showing his neural activity. Two distinct patterns were visible, the chaotic, aggressive spikes of the Berserker programming, and, underneath it, a gentler rhythm that pulsed with creativity and compassion. "This is who you were before the war," she said, pointing to the quieter pattern. "And this is what they made you into. But look here, the original patterns are still there. Your humanity wasn't destroyed, it was just buried." Marcus stared at the display, watching his own mind in real time. For the first time in 3 millennia, he could see the difference between his true self and the weapon he had been turned into. The visualization gave him something concrete to fight for. "I can choose," he whispered. "I can actually choose which part of me gets to live." Unit 07 made one final attempt to reassert control. Subject is experiencing psychological breakdown, returning to combat status to ensure mission continuation. "There is no mission," Marcus said with quiet finality. "And there never was. You were created to fight monsters, but you became one instead. I'm choosing to be something else." The struggle reached a crescendo as Marcus consciously began shutting down combat protocols that had defined him for centuries. It was like performing surgery on himself without anesthesia, cutting away parts of his own identity to reclaim his original humanity. Dr. HFY monitored his vital signs as the internal battle raged. His neural patterns are stabilizing, but the stress on his enhanced systems is enormous. If he pushes too hard, he could suffer permanent brain damage. "It's worth the risk," Marcus replied, and his voice was purely his own now, without any mechanical undertones. "I'd rather die as myself than live as a weapon." Slowly, carefully, he began to reprogram his own implants. The process took hours, with the medical team monitoring and assisting where they could. Marcus taught them about human neural architecture while they shared advanced alien medical techniques. It became the first collaborative effort between human and galactic science in over 2,000 years. When it was over, Marcus collapsed onto the medical bench, exhausted but free. The Berserker protocols were still there, locked away behind barriers he had built with his own will, but they no longer controlled him. "So what happens now?" Dr. Velkin asked. "You're the last human in the galaxy." Marcus looked around at the alien medical team who had risked their lives to help him find himself. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. Humanity's last representative shouldn't be a weapon of war. Maybe I could be something better. He stood up, testing his control over his enhanced abilities. The strength and speed were still there, but now they serve his conscious mind instead of military programming. "Dr. Zalthara, would you be willing to teach me about galactic medicine? I think it's time humanity contributed something other than violence to the galaxy." The Kethmori physician's scales rippled with what Marcus was learning to recognize as pleasure. "I think we'd be honored to have humanity's first galactic doctor." As the medical vessel continued its journey through space, Marcus began his new education. He learned about the dozens of species that now filled the galaxy, their unique biologies and medical needs. In return, he shared human perspectives on healing and compassion that had been lost for millennia. The last human had chosen not to be a reminder of war, but a symbol of hope. And in the sterile corridors of a medical ship, the true spirit of humanity lived on, not in weapons or conquest, but in the simple desire to heal and help others. Unit 07 was gone forever, but Dr. Marcus Chun was just beginning his real life.